author, columnist, managing editor of LibertyNation.com, podcast host and conservative policy advocate.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Winners and losers abundant on the GOP primary presidential debate. Who got the scores, who advanced their cause, and who didn't? Well, we'll be discussing all this and so much more on today's episode of Liberty Nation Radio right here on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Let's dive straight in and find out just which riders are set to win the GOP race.
Who won, who lost, and ultimately, does that even matter when it comes to the first GOP 2024 primary debate? Now, we're aiming for fireworks on today's show as we have with us the He Said, She Said dynamic duo of Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com, and senior political analyst, also longtime host of this here show, Mr. Tim Donner. Yes, they are married, and I believe that will add a beautiful element of political friction to today's panel. Thanks for both being here.
What makes you think people who have been married 37 years have friction?
Eyes and experience, Lisa.
Well, we don't disagree about everything.
Not everything. But politics tends to be that issue that rubs people the wrong way, as it were. So let's start. I mean, we all watched the debate, and we've purposely avoided discussing it amongst ourselves before the show. So I think we should have some fun reactions here. So let's start with who we thought won the debate. Who was the biggest winner? Let's start with you, Lisa.
Let me just say, I think that's maybe not the best question. I think the best question is who advanced their cause the most?
Sure.
Because this is a group of, also Rands. These are people probably vying for vice president, unless something, drastic happens to Donald Trump. So I think the person who advanced themselves the most was Nikki Haley, because she came off as a pragmatist. She came off as someone who is strong. It never hurts to invoke the words of Margaret Thatcher when you're a woman in politics on the conservative side. She seemed like an adult in the room without wearing it on her sleeve. And whereas Vivek as in cake, I have to keep reminding myself, he seemed a little too green. He was attacking people, and somebody called him a smart aleck. I thought there was a little bit of arrogance and hubris in his voice, like, he's 38, and I've got a few years on him, and I sort of felt like this is a guy who hasn't been knocked around enough to be president.
Okay. Tim, what's your take?
Well, I think that Vivek helped himself probably more than anybody, because he came from such a, basically ground zero in terms of name recognition. He has certainly vaulted himself into contention for the number 2 spot recently, putting a little bit of pressure on Ron DeSantis. And yeah, he was a little, Vivek seemed a little bit over caffeinated, shall we say. But at the same time, he made very profound points in very few words. He's mastered the art of the soundbite, and his closing argument was brilliant. He covered more ground in less time than anyone else. He fed the necessary red meat to the Trumpists, and, America First folks in the crowd. And it seems like that was the majority of the crowd, which you could tell by the reaction to Chris Christie and his harsh criticism of Trump. But I think Vivek Ramaswamy helped himself more than anyone, because he was a presence, and he refused to back down from the taunts of career politicians who had their guns trained on him. And why shouldn't they? He's the rising star. He's the new kid on the block. And he showed Tim, he wasn't going to be pushed around.
Tim, you made a good point about the sound bites. He's mastered the art of the soundbite. But it is kind of interesting to put them all on a debate stage, Mark, I think, because finally we get a little bit more than the soundbite. And I think he does shine when he's doing the soundbite, like Vivek. But the problem is he also shows all his minor points.
I see where you get there, Lisa.
Where he's not experienced.
You know, that's exactly the same criticism as I recall being leveled at somebody back in the 2016 presidential primary debates, and that was at
And two,
Donald Trump.
and don't forget 2008 with Barack Obama. He
Mm.
was also a guy who, in 2008 wasn't, when the first debates were probably in 2007, wasn't well known, had a chance to introduce himself to the country.
He didn't seem to be channeling Barack Obama as much as he was channeling Stockman. What's his name? Stockdale to me. Who am I? Why am I here?
Admiral Stockdale.
Admiral Stockdale.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, but he had to do that. And yeah, it was as you and I discussed, Lisa, he was a little bit hot for a cool medium, but he had to make an impression. Better to be too hot than too cold when, as you say, people only get one chance to make a first impression. Yeah. And Vivek's was to come out very strong. But I also agree with Lisa, Mark, that Nikki Haley established herself as someone who I think would be able to pull back into the fold some of those frisky, fickle suburban women who find Trump to be just unacceptable because of his personality. I think she could soften things a bit and provide a level of, experience, and the sense that Haley kind of cuts a swath right through the middle of the GOP. She can deal with Trumpists. She could also deal with establishment types. She is very articulate.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'd like to disagree with both of you on Nikki Haley. Now, I have a lot of time for Nikki Haley. I think she's incredibly smart. She's incredibly driven, and she's the kind of a person who, if she was in the position of vice president or even president, would be a force to be reckoned with domestically and on the world stage. I'll give her that. But I felt that she was really putting, especially from a foreign policy point of view, which is really her area, right? That's her ground game, is the foreign policy. She was kind of putting it that rather than anti-foreign interventionism, she was saying that was essentially isolationism, which is something that I read in the left-leaning outlets quite a lot, and also something that I put down in my article on libertynation.com that came out directly after the debate. She was using a lot of sound bites that you literally do find in Salon, for example, when it's talking about the abortion question. She was saying, we can't have unelected justices deciding our policy, which completely ignores how Roe v. Wade came into being in the first place, and also said about how we shouldn't be looking for the death penalty for people who've had an abortion. And I checked this out before writing, and that was literally from a Salon article. So she's really parroting these things that are not, to come back to Tim's point, they're not for the MAGA or the Donald Trumpian supporters, which I believe, and I might be wrong here, but I believe that they are the largest group within the current Republican voter crop.
Mark, let me just say, I think you're looking at this a little differently than Tim and I are looking at it. I think you're looking at her actual policies. I'm not saying I agree with her policies. I'm saying she advanced her cause more than I think almost anybody else on that stage, because she came off, it's tricky for a woman, as someone says, they have to come off as strong but not witchy. And
they have to do everything a man can do, but backwards and in high heels, right?
Yeah. In the words of Ginger Rogers, I think, or no, that was in the words of Faith Whittlesey, as I remember it correctly. But anyway, bottom line is, I don't agree with Nikki Haley on a lot of her policies, and you make excellent points about her policies, but I think she did advance her cause. Whereas somebody like Vivek
rhymes with fake and cake and shake.
I think throwing bombs like all of you are bought and paid for is silly.
That was too severe.
And I think lost in this whole discussion has been Ron DeSantis, who I really felt badly for, because I think he struggled with the forum a little bit. I think he's a little better one-on-one in an interview. He tried his best, and I think he is the doer in the group. He will do what he says, but his communication skills were just a little bit off last night. Sometimes he was a little too hot, sometimes a little too cool. It's hard to find a middle ground for him.
After this short break, we're going to come back, Lisa and Tim, and discuss who were the other hot contenders on there. And I really would like to pick up back on this Ron DeSantis question when we get straight back. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Lisa K. Donner and Tim Donner discussing the fallout of the GOP primary debate. Now, earlier we made our case for who was the biggest winner, but who else made gains? So, Tim and Lisa, just before the break, Lisa, you started talking about Ron DeSantis. Now, for me, although I don't think he made the splash that he needed to recover his campaign, he did well. Now, what were you just saying before we shot for break?
Well, I think he ended up even. You know, he went in kind of, I won't say in free fall, but he was really struggling. His campaign's really been struggling. He didn't do himself any harm, I don't think. And maybe did himself a little bit of good, but he wasn't the standout in the crowd. And I guess, you know, that's what people are looking for on the debate stage.
Perhaps
let me just say one.
Sorry.
Let me just say one other thing. I'd like to say that I thought Fox's Martha McCallum, who is bright, attractive, and I think she is well informed, and Bret Baier, who I'm not usually a big fan of, they did a fairly good job. I saw they got panned in one of the famous Washington dailies today, but I thought they did a pretty good job of keeping everybody reined in and not being too abusive to the people and not making themselves the center of attention, as we know somebody like Chris Wallace did.
Oh, that was, yes, the Chris Wallace moderation. It was hardly a moderation, was it? On the Ron DeSantis question there, I think you're right. I think he actually won by not going down from where he was. He managed to maintain his position as somebody serious on the stage. And for me, there were two standout moments for him. They both came pretty much at the same time. And that was when he hit George Soros on the buying of DAs around the country. And more specifically, because a lot of people talk about, we've got this George Soros influence, we've got these out of control rogue district attorneys. But he made the point that he's the only governor in the country that has actually done something about it and removed two of them from office, despite the flack he took for that. And I thought that was pretty good. And then, of course, on immigration, he's long been a no amnesty. We just need to shut this down and get it sorted straight away. And I thought those 2 points were.
Mark and Tim, can I ask you guys a question?
Please.
Do you think, you know, what do you guys think of their handling of He Who Shall Not Be Named? Which, of course, we know who that was, the elephant not in the room. How do you think they handled that?
Well, I thought Ramaswamy handled it particularly well because he said he believes without question that Donald Trump is the greatest president of the 21st century, he's saying, which isn't that long, but never, he's not exactly damning him.
You've got
praise,
4, right?
But that's right. There's only been 4. So I think he handled it particularly well by saying, look, let's not pretend that Trump isn't the front runner. Let's not pretend that he wasn't that he wasn't president. Let's not pretend that, you know, we can just ignore him. I think that Ramaswamy made, you know, the case unapologetically that he was a big supporter of Donald Trump, and he's making the case, but I can take it to the next level with a new generation of leadership. He's 35 years younger than Trump. So I think that makes the case pretty well. I thought Haley handled it pretty well because she said, look, I mean, just realistically, Donald Trump is, what did she say, the most unpopular figure in American politics. And that was not a judgment so much as it was a statement of fact based on polls, although Joe Biden is giving
him a run for his money there on that one.
So, I mean, it was hard for them to address, as they called it, the elephant who was not in the room in Donald Trump. I think it was best for all involved for Trump not to be there because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But it was also best for the rest of the contenders that he wasn't there. So in effect, it was a win-win. And if you look at it as what it probably is, a vice presidential beauty pageant,
That's a good way of putting it.
It sort of needs to be judged in that context. Who advanced their cause as being a potential running mate for Donald Trump? And I can tell you, one guy who did not, for obvious reasons, was Mike Pence.
Oh, we'll get into him, but I want Mark's answer first.
Well, I think we're missing the obvious allegory here. It was an episode of The Apprentice. It was The Apprentice new season, and everybody was on stage interviewing for either A, to be the vice president, B, to be the person who they can bring in should Donald Trump not be able to, for some reason, for some bizarre, either he's in prison and he's decided to pull out, although the two are not exclusive, or something happens that he can't run, or C, they were looking to be the alternative. And I don't think the alternative, I don't think there is a path to 535 for an alternative on that. So how Fox handled it, I think they put too much weight on the Trump question when this was clearly an episode of The Apprentice. So what they should have been doing is, what can you bring to the table for the American voters? And I think there was too much on Trump because, that it's almost trying to ignore the fact that he is the clear front runner and barring some unforeseen circumstances will be the nominee.
Yeah, and we'll find out, who won the popularity contest. My guess is it's Donald Trump had more listeners and viewers. But anyway, you make a good point. I guess the reason I think Ramaswamy isn't going places this time around is because he's too alpha male to be the number 2 on the ticket. Somebody like Tim Scott is a perfect VP candidate. Haley even might be a little bit too outspoken and too alpha female to, be the VP. But Pence, let's talk Pence, Tim. Whoa, there's just so much to get into.
Tim Scott is this year's Mike Pence, right? A steady hand, steady mind.
Well, we'll see.
Not too exciting.
We'll see if Donald Trump uses the same basic strategy that he used in picking Mike Pence in 2016, which I think we can agree was, if not a brilliant choice, a very good one, because it served to sort of reassure Republicans that he was going to be listening to them as well as to his own MAGA faithful. So he sort of put to rest the idea that he was going to be this rogue who couldn't get along with the rest of the party. So he picked someone the opposite of him in Mike Pence. Question is whether he wants to do the same thing this time. If he does, indeed, Tim Scott would probably be the ideal choice.
Wise words indeed. Now, we'll be right back with the feistiest duo since the Mr. and Mrs. went off the air, talking the biggest losers of the GOP debate. And this is the one that I think we've all been waiting for, right? Who got hammered? That's the big question. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner, and her significant other, longtime host of this here show, Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and husband of the aforementioned editor-in-chief, Mr. Tim Donner. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about the biggest winners, those who advanced their case the most. But for every winner, there is, of course, a loser. So who lost out and who failed to make their mark in the very first of this year's GOP presidential primary debates? Thanks for being back. Team Lisa, why don't you kick us off? Who do you think failed to move the needle forward for their campaign?
Well, we haven't spoken at all about him, and I think he deserves just a smidgen of airtime, and that is Asa Hutchinson. He came off...
That's what Fox thought last night as well, just a smidgen of airtime.
Yeah. He came off as so incredibly 20th century. I felt like I was looking at George H.W. Bush, the
He
father.
mentioned, yeah, he mentioned when I was in the Bush administration, I was thinking, oh my goodness, that is probably the worst thing you can say right
Well,
now.
I think I'm not sure. I think he's talking about the W administration, not the HW, right, Tim?
It didn't seem like it.
Yes,
It didn't seem like it, you're
it
right.
was a Bush 43 administration, although he presented, like Lisa said, as if he was right out of the 1980s, really.
Yeah.
Which is why she said he reminded him of George H.W. Bush. He's, I don't even know why he's running for president. I have no idea what
Well,
what he's got in mind, because he's not going to be picked for number 2, and he's got no independent support base. I don't know how he even qualified. Likewise, Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor, I thought he came off as definitely not ready for prime time. He definitely had a bit of the deer in the headlights, and as good as Ramaswamy's closing statement was, in a sense, closing the deal,
Burgum.
Doug Burgum's was a disaster. He was reading like it was from a script that he had decided beforehand, and then he couldn't even spit it out properly. So he was a big loser too. Not that anybody much.
But still, what do you guys think about Christie? Because it got to the point where Fox was giving so much airtime to Christie. I was like, okay, I can't stand him anymore. I can't take this anymore. Please brush through this.
I have my thoughts on Chris Christie. Okay, so Chris Christie, he has this reputation as this effective attack dog. He has this reputation. I don't think that's deserved whatsoever.
I agree.
I mean, he clearly went there. He was building up what his performance was going to be, and he was going to prosecute Trump. Although I think Asa Hutchinson actually said the words that on the debate stage, "I'm going to prosecute Trump." Which Asa Hutchinson just failed in every way imaginable on that stage. But Chris Christie, his attacks, they weren't biting, they weren't on point.
I don't think they were effective.
Well, that's the big crime, isn't it? They were neither effective nor witty. I mean, you can get away with, you don't have to have both, but you got to have at least one of those things, either effective or witty. And yeah, I think this is an entirely undeserved reputation that's been built up in part from within the Republican Party as well, because they have had their uses for Chris Christie, especially winning New Jersey. But
look, I mean, Chris Christie is a guy who's trying to remain relevant long past his expiration date. He was relevant when he was governor of New Jersey, but, he talks about Trump's conduct. But I think when people think of Christie, who are in the know, and they think of his conduct, they think about the infamous bridge closing, the George Washington Bridge going into New York. And that was a despicable act that the Republicans, basically said that's the way a Democratic mayor behaves. Also, Chris Christie didn't help himself when in 2012, down the stretch in what was considered a close race between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, he brought Obama into New Jersey and gave him a huge hug.
Oh, right.
And thanked him for what he had done for New Jersey right before the election. I mean, he could have.
You guys are summing this up really well, but let me just slip this in here. And I think you're both making the same point, and that is, and I know he wouldn't like this analogy, but he's got the Hillary Clinton problem. Chris Christie is not likable. He is very unlikable. And that was essentially the rap on Hillary Clinton. Nobody really liked her personality. And I think that's what you're saying about Christie. And I think that's true.
I think the problem is, too, he gets the reputation of being an effective debater. But in fact, what he is an attack dog. But that appears to be his purpose in running. In 2016, he was the most famous moment from 2016 was when he took down Marco Rubio. And the only thing they'll remember about Christie from this 2024 race is that he's in there specifically to attack Trump. He doesn't have his own agenda. He just wants to get in there and say, I have the guts to take on Donald Trump, but he doesn't offer anything else, honestly, to a Republican base.
Let's not spend any more time talking about Chris Christie.
You know what?
Begging you.
I got to come in one more thing on Chris Christie here. From what Tim says there, he doesn't have anything to offer. You're absolutely right there. All he was offering was an attack on Donald Trump. He didn't offer substantive policies. He didn't, which is kind of the point of a GOP debate stage, right? To say, this is what I'm going to do as president. Well, if you're president, then you're still going to carry on attacking Donald Trump. What's the point? That's what the Democrats are for.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, Lisa, who else in your estimation failed to move the needle?
Unfortunately, I think Scott did not move the needle at all for himself. He was just a little too type B, I guess I would say. But again, that could vault him into the perfect VP candidate. He's eminently likable. I mean, this guy's got the faith, that Pence talks about, but this guy, you get the sense that he really walks the walk and he doesn't just stand there and talk the talk, which I appreciate.
I don't think it's fair to say, though, that Mike Pence doesn't walk the walk.
No,
he wears it too much on his sleeve. I think is the problem. Tim Scott is, if anyone is auditioning for vice president, it's Tim Scott, because I think everybody knows he's not going to be the nominee. Yes, he's looking ahead to 2028 when, let's not forget, it's only a 4-year term for either Trump or Biden. And I was actually talking about this last night, Mark, that this might be the first time you have two candidates going against each other, neither of whom will be eligible to serve more than 4 years. So there is a serious setup for 2028. Tim Scott was doing that. But most of all, I think he's presenting himself as the perfect sort of foil within the Republican Party for Donald Trump. Take down the claims of racism. And, well, if he's such a racist, how come he's got a black guy running with him on the ticket, even though the left would almost predictably, as sure as the sun rising in the east, they'll call him an Uncle Tom, not in
or the black face of Trump's white supremacy.
Oh, yes, something like that. That's a good way of putting it.
Like the lawn jockey for the far right, which they used to say for Clarence Thomas. But I think his message is wrong for the time. Tim Scott. People are in a bubbly, optimistic, best days are ahead of us, greatness of America type of mood. There are some elections where that message is appropriate. This is not one of them. People in the Republican Party, conservatives, they want someone who's going to cut and slash and fight against the radicalism of the Democratic Party. That's what they want. They want a fighter. And
that's why they chose Donald Trump in 2016.
Precisely.
Because he wasn't going to take a licking. He was going to
keep on ticking.
Keep on ticking, right.
And while we go through other old adverts, we'll be right back after this short break with Tim and Lisa continuing the conversation. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Lisa K. Donner and Tim Donner. Earlier in the show, we talked the winners, those who advanced their cause, and those who lost out in the recent GOP primary presidential debate. Now, for our last segment today, gang, what I'd really like to talk about is what kind of calculations is Donald Trump doing right now? Obviously, he's had... I think it's fair to say that the GOP debate, it really was a vice presidential interview or an episode of The Apprentice reborn, as I pointed out earlier. But what kind of calculations is Donald Trump doing now? Who's definitely out? Who's a contender? I think let's start with Lisa. What do you think? I think we could, no, in fact, let's just rule out the obvious ones. Chris Christie is not going to be Donald Trump's VP pick. That's not going to happen. Asa Hutchinson.
And neither is Mike Pence.
And neither is Mike Pence.
Well, I mean, that would be the getting the band back together. That would be an interesting one. So getting the band back together, he's off the list. Doug Burgum, I mean, no. He seems like a nice guy. But
most people in North Dakota don't even know who he is.
yeah, it's.
I think even well-informed people aren't sure he was the governor of North Dakota. You know, it's like, is he still the
Yeah.
governor? Or, what's going on in
Yeah.
North Dakota?
You know, I had to go to Ballotpedia to check if he was still the governor.
I know.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you call a pure vanity candidacy. He's doing it because he's got the money to do it.
Yeah, I mean, he wants to be, I think his main pitch, sorry, just to get back into his main pitch was that he wants to be the energy guy, that's his sale. So Donald Trump was the immigration guy. Doug Burgum wants to be the energy guy, which is a great position to be in, but I don't think it's enough to sell it. So let's put Doug Burgum to the side as well. But let's not put him in a basket of deplorables, because that's not what we do here. But what's the electoral math here for Donald Trump? Lisa, who do you think's who are the top two for Donald Trump to pick from?
I think it's got to be Tim Scott. And, you know, I'm not sure. I don't think he's hep to Haley, because she was his ambassador to the UN. She left in the middle. And I know, Tim, you said that's not a big deal. Lots of people leave in the middle of their appointments, but I think that was a high profile appointment, and I don't think he was pleased by her leaving. I'm not sure who the second is. You know, obviously DeSantis is the dream team for a lot of people, but there's a lot of rancor between the two of them now that there didn't used to be. So that might be
that bridge is burned, right?
I don't know. I don't, you know, it could be. What do you think, Tim? Especially when we're talking electoral math, the person you want to talk to is Mr. Donner.
Absolutely right. Tim?
Well, since the last two elections in 16 and 20 were decided by basically about 40 or 50,000 votes in 3 or 4 states, it's the same election this time. It's a very narrow number of votes that will make the difference between them, most likely. You see not a whole lot changing from 2024, where you have 2020, I mean, where you have people on both sides voting for their person in spite of the questions or issues that they may have had with him before. I think Tim Scott seems like an obvious choice for Trump. He has said in the past, at least once, that Tim Scott is, quote, overqualified to be his VP. Now, some take that to mean that he's ruling him out. Some take it, and this is how I take it, that he's ruling him in say,
it's the Kamala Harris
Tim
thing,
Scott,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Transitional candidate.
Right.
As a transitional candidate, only he actually has some electoral appeal, unlike Kamala Harris, who, by the way, they're now stuck with because they can't dump her from the ticket.
It would look really bad. That would not be a good move.
Right. So, I mean, I think there is a question of whether Scott would take it because of how controversial Trump is.
No, I think he would take it.
My answer to that is, if he wasn't going to take it, he wouldn't be running this time. Although some will say he's just trying to expose himself for 2028, when the whole thing will start all over again, whether Trump wins or loses.
Tim, just a quick interruption here. What did you think of the RNC bank your vote thing? Do you think that Republicans are going to go for this?
I think they're going to have to. I think they realize after 2020, the biggest single mistake politically that Donald Trump made in 2020 was to demonize mail-in voting instead of getting on the bandwagon. And 75% of votes were cast before Election Day in 2020. The Republicans have no choice but to hit this, and hit it a lot harder, frankly, than they have. They've got to drill into their constituents that if you don't want a repeat of 2020, you need to vote early, if not often.
Yeah, just on that topic, it's funny, isn't it? Pretty much everything is becoming more done from your home, done from your mobile phone. You know, we do our shopping online. Well, many people do shopping online. We deal with our bank from our home. It's the direction. of everything moving forward that's decentralized from you have to go to a brick and mortar building. And why wouldn't voting be any different? I mean, there are a lot of arguments against the idea, and I am on board with some of them, but it is absolutely the direction that things are going. My electoral math on this, and it might not be accurate, but you made a point earlier, Lisa, that Vivek rhymes with cake and many other words that are less flattering. It is a bit too much of an alpha, and there'd be Donald Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy, and that's two big personalities clashing. But as Tim points out, there's only one term here. And Donald Trump's gone the route before with a vice president of somebody who's a polar opposite to him.
That's a good point.
Much more relaxed to do that thing. And I think now Donald Trump doesn't have the luxury, if he wins, of 8 years to get things done. He's got 4 years. He doesn't need a scalpel. He needs a sledgehammer. And I think that Vivek Ramaswamy is potentially that sledgehammer. And also, he'd be somebody who would almost carry on that kind of thing, because although we have seen in his interviews having a little difficulty on flipping positions, but I think that if he gets started in the VP position as a sledgehammer, making things happen, I think he has the energy, not just because of his youth, but just because of his actual personality. He has the energy to carry that on, running for president himself in 2028. What do you reckon to that?
I'd be interested in hearing what somebody of Vivek's generation has to say. You know, how did they feel about his performance? I can tell you from our perspective.
I'm not far from his generation, and I think his rapping on stage doesn't appeal to anybody. I don't. Sorry, carry on.
Okay, well, that's interesting. But, you know, to the typical older set, I think he came off as too hot for a cool medium and too alpha to be a foil for Donald Trump. That's just my opinion, but you asked for it.
We absolutely did. Tim?
There's a good point to be made here, which is that, which could be one of the reasons that Trump would pick DeSantis. It's not going to happen. But one of the reasons he could do that now when he couldn't really do it 4 years ago is his ego cannot process the idea of somebody else taking center stage or
Tim, is it fair to say his ego? I mean, is it fair to say his ego? I mean, who wants to be president and have your vice president be picking at you?
Well, right. But the point that I made, right, I agree. But the point is that now he doesn't have to, quote, watch his back over someone who is forming an independent power base, right, which you could with a strong candidate running for potentially 8 years. He doesn't have to watch his back, so to speak. And his ego doesn't need to be satiated like it was by picking someone like Pence, who was quintessentially willing to be a number 2 guy and stand quietly behind him and nod his head most of the time. But now there's no reason to have to worry about someone forming an independent power base privately. Trump can pick someone who will help him get done what he needs to get done in the next 4 years. So I think he needs to think of it in terms of who advances the ball the most for my agenda.
Can we say an effective political ticket is like a good marriage, and that is when you can promote the other person instead of promoting yourself? Just saying.
I would say that is a great analogy to end on. Is Donald Trump looking for a faithful wife or a fling in the dark? Tim Donner and Lisa Donner, thank you ever so much for being here.
Thanks, Mark. That's great.
Thank you, Mark.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'd like to thank our guests, Lisa K. Donner and Tim Donner. Thank you both for being here. My thanks to you, the listeners, for taking the time to tune in. We'll see you next week right here on Liberty Nation Radio.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.